I'm Lachelle McKay. I'm the town administrator for Leonardtown. And with us tonight, we have Tripp Muldrow. He's with Arnett Muldrow and Associates. They've been working with us since 2019 on our downtown plan and our waterfront plan, and now on our comprehensive plan update. He's going to kind of tell you a little bit about the process and what it means and some of the issues that'll be hot topics. We have several staff here tonight. We have Janine Harrington, who's our assistant town administrator, Mike Bailey, who's the town planner, Jennifer Misner, which is our new Main Street manager, and Terry Dempsey is our executive secretary. And then we have a few of our comp plan committee members here tonight as well. You guys want to raise your hands? just to hear what you have to say. And our Main Street Advisory Board Chairman just walked in, Katie Folger. So welcome everyone, and I'm going to turn it over to Tripp.
Great, thank you, Lachelle. Normally I would stand up, but I have torn meniscus in my leg, and my leg is at this hour starting to. So I feel like Johnny Carson tonight. And part of that's because we were expecting a very small crowd here, so it's great to see everybody here. What I'm going to do is give a high-level overview, and then we'll kind of open it up for discussion, and then after that we'll break and let you kind of take to your own on some of the things that you may want to cover, and we'll spread around the staff and committee and whoever wants to stick around and answer any specific questions you have. But I'll just start out with first, it's a real pleasure to be working on this comp plan update. We're calling it Update 2025 because the timing of when it'll be kind of hit the approval process will be in 2025. Just a little, on comprehensive plans in Maryland. I work all over the country, but Maryland has had Comprehensive Planning Act for a long time, part of the Smart Growth Initiative that really began I lived here in the late 90s. I think it began in the early 80s and then kind of jumped up a little bit in the early 90s. And, oftentimes as a planner, I'm asked, what is a comp plan? And usually my answer is, I don't know. I'm kidding. It's a policy document, and it really is that long-range guide for a community to kind of look at what your dreams and hopes are, looking at land use and a whole series of elements, and I'll get into that. In Maryland, it's required that they're updated about every 10 years. It's kind of a statutory requirement. Always they involve public engagement. Sometimes it's hard for folks. It's hard for me even as a planner to get super excited about them, just because it's so much policy and it's so broad, but it's such an important document. And then it also helps align you with the state smart growth principles. So as you go through the process, there will be a point where this plan gets sent to Annapolis, to the state for review at the Department of Planning. And there is a legal underpinning for it. So, and in some states, it's actually, you can't even have zoning or any land use regulations unless you have a comp plan. It's tied to that in Maryland, but it's the foundation for your zoning and development regulations. And it allows you to kind of cast that vision for the future. And so in the state, the requirements, and we call them elements. And so there's the land use element that kind of covers, right, what's housing, what's commercial, what's industrial, what is institutional, just kind of lays that out. It doesn't get into the deep depth of the zoning as far as that goes, but it does address what happens within each one of those categories. And what we're finding more and more in land use is more and more mixed use in communities, and also just addressing things like downtown. The transportation element, that one kind of speaks for itself. One thing that we're kind of uncovering as we're working on this plan update is that the last plan that was completed, it focused a lot on roads. We're focusing a lot more on this plan, not just on roads, but on bicycle connections, walking connections. That wasn't in the prior plan, didn't. It's just that this one's delving a little deeper into it, and also even things like transit related things. Then there's community facilities. That's where we get into the parks, your fire, your police service, anything that is a something that you use here. Housing, and I'll say in Maryland and nationally, and it won't come as a surprise to you all, this is really emerging as a much more serious, much more an issue that we're addressing much more in comp plans these days than we were prior in my career. It used to be kind of like, this is how many households we have, this is our housing type, and this is what it is. And Maryland's really, having us look at it in a lot more deep ways, and y'all certainly would understand why, because of the housing situation the nation is facing. And I say that to say there are provisions at the state level that we'll certainly have to pay attention to, and then to the degree we, you all are, the stuff's written for the state, so we also have to kind of adapt it to how it affects Leonardtown vis-a-vis a Baltimore, or Annapolis, or a Montgomery County, which has got a whole different set of issues. Then we get into things like water resources, sensitive areas, mineral resources, and then there's the whole municipal growth piece, and we'll spend some time talking about that. And so that's an important component of it that not all states have, but you all have a municipal growth boundary that has been established and continues to be looked at the county level and at the state level and here locally. So we'll spend some time talking about that. There's a development regulations piece and an implementation piece. There's a legacy in Leonardtown of having 3 additional elements, and we're gonna, I think we're sticking to those because it makes sense to do it. The downtown element, the community character and design element, and then waterfront use and development element. And I can say this, as we embark on this plan, having worked with the community now for 5 years, as we do the comp plan, what we're inheriting is a whole series of plans to help inform this that are way more detailed than what a comp plan is required to do. So particularly with these 3, we're gonna be just folding those in, because it's not an idea of reinventing the wheel per se, when you have a much more detailed plan. So typically, you're gonna see a lot more specificity probably in this plan than would have been in past plans here in Leonardtown. I'm gonna jump from here and kind of give you some of the stats that are coming out. And I've got a whole set of stats here. If y'all wanna pick my brain on it and dig deeper in it, we can do it. But I think probably the most important one, and it won't come as a surprise to y'all, it's just the remarkable growth that the town of Leonardtown has experienced basically since the year 2000. And in the 2010 plan, your population stood at 2930. The hot off the presses estimates from the Maryland State Planning Office are 4974. So we're looking at, you're not, that's about 75%, 80% growth between 2010 and 2023, which is the most recent year they have the numbers. Keep in mind that part of that growth is not just within the town boundaries, you've expanded the town boundaries. So there's a series of annexations that have happened between then and now that have grown the town. But certainly a lot of that's natural growth as well, that's happening. And I'm running some projection numbers on the growth. There's one that's what I would call the scary version. And this was done in 2010 too. That one would put growth by 2040 at about 10,000 people. But I can kind of say rest assured, the other 2 models that I'm looking at, partly because you just don't have the boundaries to kind of keep going out, it's probably going to be more, threading the needle by 2040, something less than that. So, but it is good to kind of run different scenarios. And then I always like just kind of sharing some of the fast facts here. This one I got a kick out of, and those of you who are longtime Leonardtown residents who remember what, it was like here in 2010, the median age in the town was 44. in 2010. Now it is 32, and I'm looking at the Weeblo Scouts here. And so the median age here, basically, and y'all know median, over half the population's over 32, half the population's under 32. A 12-year difference in this amount of time frame shows the real changing complexion of the community. And Lachelle was reminding me of her memories when she was, you know, I won't talk about when you started here.
2000.
When she was, yes.
I was two.
There's something like 60, you know, kids in the community at the time. The median household is stratospheric, so it's 138,000. And I just updated that number because that's the 2023 number. The 2022 number was about 10,000 less. It's about 20,000 higher than St. Mary's County and about, 40,000 higher than the state of Maryland. Keep in mind that Maryland is always neck and neck with Connecticut as the highest median household income state in the United States of America. So we're definitely dealing with a median household income that's high. And I want to characterize that too, just because the median household income is high, it doesn't mean that you're Beverly Hills. You know, that's a whole different kind of angle. You still very much, you know, this is a half and half kind of thing, but your poverty rate is low. You generally kind of cluster in that upper middle class kind of range. An important thing to look at, and this is pretty accurate historically, every day about 5,500 people commute into the town of Leonardtown to work. It still remains a population or an employment center for St. Mary's County and the region because of the role that you play as the governmental center, the health center, the education center, and so forth. And then also you have about 1,390 that commute out every day. Now the arrows, oh gosh, I didn't advance my slide. There it is. The arrows on the slide do not show the direction they're going. That's just for illustrative purposes only. Generally, they're coming in from all around and you're exporting primarily. You're kind of doing a little bit of a cross-pollination over toward the Naval Air Station, with certainly some commuting out to DC as well. I'd be happy to, at this point, answer any questions y'all have on just some of the data that we're running before I get into some of the mapping and some of the other things that are going. If you want me to dig into my spreadsheet, I can dig into it and maybe answer some of the questions y'all might have. Happy to do it, yes.
Could you go back to your bar graph?
Yes. Oh, yes, I'm doing it on my computer and on the TV, so.
Is everything actual except for the last bar? Or?
Yes, everything is actual. And so, I should not say this. The 2020 census has been hotly contested in every community I'm working in. Everything except for the last bar is census data. The 2023 is the Maryland Office of Planning number, but it's also extremely close to the American Community Survey estimate number from the census. So they're tracking pretty close to one another.
Yeah, which is based on historical trends.
It's based on historical trends.
Because this graph doesn't point to that solution, right?
What's that? It doesn't point
like
to.
the root cause of the growth between 2010 and 2020, that really hasn't changed, has it? But the graph would make you think something's different.
Right, and then I think that's an important consideration is that the key thing between 2010 and 2020, well, you had a tremendous amount of growth,
Right.
building growth, but you also annexed. So Clark's Rest came in then.
Clark's Rest was already in.
Already in, so
It
help me.
was, and Leonard's Grant was in. It was
Leonard's-
just Meadows.
Meadows,
And then mostly,
but it was construction within those too.
well,
It
yes,
wasn't
but
quite done.
that's when the construction happened.
Yes,
For
so-
Leonard's Grant and Clark's Rest.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, so that's probably what we're seeing on
Yeah,
that.
got it.
And I think the other thing that's an important factor is you're bucking the trend I'm seeing nationally. Your household size is increased, whereas in America, and in most communities, household sizes are decreasing. That's a function of your age going from 44 to 32. So you have more families with children than you had back when we did the other plan. So it's just a whole different ballgame from where we were in 2010. Any other questions? I can nerd out on this all evening. And so some of the major changes we've kind of touched on, it's not quite double, that near doubling the population since 2010. For those of you who did live here then, I've been working here since 2019, so I've seen the ongoing revitalization of downtown. That's been a remarkable change here in Leonardtown. I work in other parts of the county, and it's been fun for me to watch folks, talk about how they come here because this is their place to go to have a good time now. And I think that's a real important change. Again, major subdivisions like Clark's Rest, Leonard's Grant, the Meadows, and Town Run 1. The Route 5, and we're definitely saying partial completion of improvements because part of it's done and part of it's undone, and that's a funding issue. So that's certainly a major change. And then there's a little bit of a lull that we're in just at the moment, and it's not so much a market lull, it's the wastewater construction has kind of got you in a bit of a pause. But that's gonna be done very, very soon. So the things are gonna pick back up again. And then, and I know y'all have lived it, I've lived it just in the few years I've been working here, but Tudor Hall is accelerating from concept to reality. It's really funny for me because in doing the update to the study, I went back to the early 2000 studies, and Tudor Hall was talked about then, updated in 2010, and now it's just getting a lot more, it's getting a lot closer to
I'll just
reality.
point it out on the map for those who don't know because you don't have to get up that way. So here's the downtown, this is the wharf. This is a 400-acre farm just to the west of us, and that's called Tudor Hall Farm, and that will be coming forward for development in the next couple of months. The town owns 240 of the acres. We own all the waterfront. So there, you can't see it very well when you come up later. You can see the parcels that the private developer owns that will be developed with residential and some commercial and mixed use.
So, and that's really good timing to talk about that because in my experience it's y'all know this who lived here a long time, to have a piece of land that big in the heart of town is extremely rare, after the hundreds of years you've existed. And you've been planning on it and for it for decades. And so that's coming to fruition. As a planner, I'll nerd out for a minute and, just say it's cool because it's growing from within rather than kind of sprawling outward. So it does give a chance to do some things that you all wanted to do. And I'm just gonna touch on a couple pieces of this. This is the most recent downtown strategic plan, and it does touch on Tudor Hall. The important things that are kind of coming through here, major road improvement, which would be the Fenwick Street extension that basically would connect over toward Clark's Rest at Route 5. That would kind of complete the road loop that, is.
Vanna White again here?
Yeah.
So this is the transportation, this is Route 5, this is Hollywood Road. So over the years, we have had a connector road from Singletree to get to Clark's Rest, through Clark's Rest to go to Leonard's Grant, back out to Hollywood Road by the new library and school. And then this road is the green, which will connect from Clark's Rest down to Fenwick Street, so that you can actually do a whole loop without going on Route 5 and adding traffic to that, and trying to keep the people coming to the downtown instead of turning and going out to California or somewhere else.
Couple other features of the plan here, and again, this isn't the comp plan, but it'll be folded into that downtown section, is, as Lachelle said, a tremendous amount of this 200 acres is publicly owned. 400 acres is publicly owned land. That is programmed to include a waterfront trail network and a trail network that would penetrate all throughout Tudor Hall, that would create pedestrian connectivity. One of the challenges that, and we'll talk about this in a minute, we want to engage you in discussion on this. One of the challenges is the barrier that we have, that Route 5 kind of creates in crossing over. And so that's something that we want to address. Having that amount of public space is really important. A lot of it also addresses the sensitivity of waterfront
The
development.
total is 400, we have 240 acres,
Okay.
I wasn't sure what you're asking, okay.
Okay, so yeah,
Clarification.
240 public, and then the total is 400. Much of Tudor Hall will be single family. I think one major thing that we're eager to kind of have the comp plan continue to address, I call it the seam, but that's not a good term. It really is this whole idea of where does downtown Leonardtown grow toward Leonard Hall, and how does that create a seamless kind of progression between neighborhood and downtown, which will allow it to continue to thrive and also maybe offer some different housing types close in. And so that's what you see kind of in this core area here. Here is some ideas on how that infill might happen over time. And then there's some exciting features that are shown in the plan. Fenwick Lawn, which is envisioned as a major city or major town park, kind of the central town park that would have a major town green. It would have a dog park, field space, playground space, shelter space, and kind of be a centerpiece of and a gathering spot for the community. And then also an amphitheater overlooking Breton Bay, which would be remarkable if that comes to pass. And then something that's been talked about for quite some time is a full-scale hotel that would be waterfront and possibly have meeting space in it, and restaurant in it. And that's been talked about, gosh, for 30-something years, I believe. So anyways, just kind of neat to look at that plan, and then moving on into how we kind of look at the town as a whole. And what you'll see in the, I advance on one and then don't advance on the other. And so that one mimics the map in the middle here, although the colors are a little off. And so the county and the town kind of work together to identify the municipal growth area. And so these areas have not changed significantly, but we do have an opportunity to kind of fine tune those at the update. And so we can get into some of the details on where those growth areas are. We see a big one over to the east, which is the Cedar Lane connection. We also see kind of closing in a gap in the northwesterly section as potential. And then it gets a little fuzzy too, up on the northern side of town on where those growth areas may or may not, they're designated. It does not necessarily mean that the town annexes, but it does give us a chance to examine growth in those areas and what can happen in those areas. And so, is there anything you want to add on that didn't cover?
The development district is what the county has designated, one of two. There's Lexington Park and Leonardtown. So the pink, this is all Cedar Lane Road area wrapping around to Hollywood Road. That is outside of the town boundaries currently, but it's still within the development district that the county has designated. And so just trying to show that and look at where the natural growth would be. And then there's no more development district north on 5 or south on 5, but looking at those areas, what those might lend themselves to be in the future.
And so at this point, we'd love to, hear from you on what you see as some of the issues. And I would just love to kind of start, with, well, first of all, any just questions at this point, and then I've got some things for us to kind of, work on together. So, any questions or concerns?
got a question. What is the county's role when you evaluate this? You said that they were involved before. What's their role as far as deciding on what they allow you to bring it and to your
Well, okay, so
area?
they
program?
will review and can comment along with the state planning agency. They would then, when it comes to annexation, they can't refuse property to annex, but the state requires that in our comprehensive plan, if a parcel wants to annex in the future, they have to be shown as a future growth area in our comp
Right.
plan first.
Okay,
And then the county is involved if they want to upzone at the time they come in. If they want to come in as an equal zoning to what they have in the county, then they really can't stop that, the county can't.
okay.
But if they want to upzone in the first 5 years that when they annex into town, then the county needs to agree to that upon
So
annexation.
they have to agree to it.
Yes,
I
it's
gotcha.
gonna be an
Okay.
upzoning, yes.
And that gives, because you're designated in Maryland and because the zones were, for lack of a better term, concordant with the county and the town as they stand right now, it puts you in a very good position. I work in a lot of communities and states where it's adversarial. This is not really set up to be adversarial.
Not usually. A lot of it is dictated with water and sewer availability, which in the 70s, Metcom actually was allocated some capacity in the town's wastewater treatment plant. So the sewer line actually goes outside the town all the way out to the fairgrounds on Route 5 and all the way north to Banneker School on Route 5 North, and then out Hollywood Road to around Bradford's Market. And they have used all that capacity. They don't have any more capacity available in our wastewater treatment plant. So any of these areas that want to grow surrounding the town would need to come into town to have access to water and sewer, public water and sewer. They could do private septic on their properties, but for any kind of density, they're gonna wanna come into the town for public water and sewer.
Thank you.
Other questions before I throw some your way and let you kind of react? I'm just curious, so the first question I have is, because of the growth, how many of you were here in 2010 when the plan was last updated? Okay, so that tracks. And when you kind of think about the population growth of Leonardtown, you know, it's gonna be about 1 in every 2 people you see would have lived here then, kind of based on that growth. We have a lot that we can incorporate into this comprehensive plan. It ranges from policy direction to vision to goals and objectives, and it also relates to things that we want to make sure that we're making sure don't happen, or at least guiding in that direction. So I want to start on the positive end and say, what are some attributes of Leonardtown that you feel like this comprehensive plan needs to absolutely make sure it continues to incorporate? Yeah.
Active adult,
The active adult.
senior, active adult.
I think you're touching on, and is there features of that you want to expand on?
Well, I feel like, you know, I mean, now that we have all the millennials here, they, you know, and people are teleworking a lot, the restaurants are being served more than they were, where active adults or senior housing, that's, you know, disposable incomes that could fill the void when you don't have the millennials and everybody else filling the restaurants and doing the entertaining. And, you know, it doesn't require as much parking, which is, you know, we need all the parking we can get around here. And, you know, from an economic development standpoint for the county, you know, the county is drawing all, and I say millennials, but, you know, that's what most people are using, that, you know, we've got this employment base, and they want I'm sure everybody knows this, but families now want their parents around. They want the grandparents here
That
taking care of the kids.
multi-generational.
The grandkids. So as you say, the average age is 32, well, their parents want to be near here too. They're moving here too. And either the county's gonna do it or the town's gonna do it.
Right,
But it needs to be done. I mean, it is a missing link, I think.
okay, that's good. Well, and I think you're hitting too, that start to foray into that housing issue.
Yeah,
And we can get into some detail on that, that's one of my, but let's keep it going, because that's a really good, good start there, yes, sir.
Yeah, I don't think schools are probably in scope, but it'd be interesting to know the relationship between this plan and it seems like school plans kind of lagged this a little bit. I don't know if you talked to how this like dovetails into school planning.
Yes. I guess I'm
You
using
s-
that probably.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, so, we are in very close contact with the county, with the school board, a lot. They know all of the future plans, they know the timing of it. I talked to them just recently, they have a need to redistrict for, Leonardtown High School is overcrowded, but the rest of them aren't in the county. And they're in, I think maybe a little bit of redistricting with the, elementary schools possibly. But with Walter Francis Duke School being built, they're in pretty good shape with that. But they do not have the numbers at this point to build another school, because they have to be overcrowded to be able to get this state funding. But they do need to do some redistricting, but we are in very close contact with them. We did collect the school impact fee up until the county changed to an excise tax, and we're working directly with the school board to try to figure out how we can still fund the impact fee that used to go to the schools that we would send directly to the county, but that isn't there anymore, so we're trying to figure out with the schools how to do that directly to them.
So it seems like just a simplified paraphrase, the towns can be forward-looking, but the schools are kind of rear.
The way they're
looking.
funded, right, but they still have to know what's coming so that they can plan and they
Right.
can redistrict or distribute the students where, if there, is a need to do that, which is not something anybody enjoys, but I think they're gonna need to do that very soon.
So then is it a consideration for the town to be like, well, if we can't get new schools, do we really need to be growing our community?
Well, first of all, as we said, we are one of 2 development districts in the county, and that was done to protect the rural character of the rest of the county. However, if there was a ban, we don't have a adequate public facilities requirement to stop building, but certainly working to make sure that there's good schools for them to go to. But I don't think, they were even talking, I heard them at the county commissioner meeting about closing a school in the southern part of the county because they didn't have enough. So, I mean, the growth has to be there as the kids transition from grade to grade. And I don't think they want to shut down development. It's really more about keeping pace and keeping it distributed among the schools.
And one of the things we're monitoring, I think, to that is not only looking at the age cohorts in the population, but also looking at school enrollment figures, and we rely on the schools actually to help us on that too. And what I'm finding too in the data, without getting too much in the weeds, is that what I'm seeing, even just in the past couple year trends, is that your youth population is still increasing, but it's shifting slightly upward in age, progressing slightly upward in age, so, which is kind of what we would expect to see. So,
I was gonna add, you were asking for different thoughts, and you touched on a little bit, but the bike paths, and
Oh,
from a
yes.
bike path aspect, I'm thinking of a safe bike path that's not tied in right next to a major road, or, divided just by plastic bins or lines, so, and you may touch on that more, but,
That is a great comment, without me going into that transportation section of the plan. But a couple things that we're looking at is, we completely agree, the bike and we think, Tudor Hall has the opportunity to do this, to have separate bike facilities that will not be on-road facilities. And that's a critical, concern. Also looking at sidewalks moving north Yeah. here, and I can go two on the screen.
Yeah, I don't think it goes all the way over.
Yeah,
So we have, the town owns, so almost 2.5 miles out from the wharf to the winery, all the waterfront, so we anticipate, on our plans, we show a, promenade extending, this is a 58-acre bird sanctuary, you can't build in there, but you can have groomed paths in there, but the rest of it, we could have trails, and then they could spur off in different areas through the neighborhoods and stuff as well.
And how would that tie into like Clark's Rest and Leonard's Grant and out by Bradford so people can come and go?
you've hit a pinch point that we feel like are really strong points that we're making in the comp plan, but I'd love to have that reinforcement, is crossing over, Route 5. We see 3 crossing opportunities that are really important. Where the West Fenwick Clark's Rest intersection is a critical one. Right here in the center of town, where we kind of know is that pinch point. And then there's another one further east,
Where Riken is.
where Riken is.
That area.
And so, one of the things that in the draft, again, everything right now is drafting, so like, this is our first public meeting, so this is, but this whole idea of either, overpasses, underpasses, or some sort of it's the opinion of so far what we're hearing is that it's not just enough to have a pad that you press and you have a dedicated crossing, it needs to be a little more robust than that, based on the traffic patterns that you have. I'd love to hear feedback on that, because if there's an echo on that sentiment, it's just what my observation from being away is y'all have done a tremendous job making sure your neighborhoods connect with one another, but your major arterials still create huge boundaries that if I'm a parent of a young person, and I live in, north side of town, I'm gonna be reluctant to let my young person ride across those intersections, so.
I think a pedestrian bridge right over Washington over to the town run sidewalks kind of seems like the obvious point for that. Like you said, it's the biggest pinch right there because it's that main arterial. And Route 5 is gonna be your boundary for the concentration of the downtown and the Main Street, of course. But getting that bike trail over there, you can get to all 3 of the main neighborhoods. And then if you did annex the Cedar Lane at some point, you'd be in the middle between those
Yep.
barriers. And then having it be a bridge that has a bike lane in it as well would hopefully not mess with traffic too much. I'm sure that'll be expanded at some point too. But as you mentioned, state funding kind of puts a halt on that. We don't have much
Right.
control.
Right.
Route 5 and Hollywood Road are both state highways, so it kind of limits what we can control over it. So this, we were hoping if we add some pedestrian crossings, safe pedestrian crossings, Leonard's Grant and Clark's Rest, even Meadows can connect when the sidewalk is finished on Hollywood Road and there's a stoplight now, to getting them to the Clark's Rest intersection or to downtown. They both make a lot of sense, really.
Yeah, other thoughts on that? That's been a discussion point that we continue to have. And I will say this, and part of the role of the comp plan is to be the voice of the town. And that's the voice of the town to the various state departments. So they don't necessarily have to agree or like what the voice of the town is, but we need to get it in black and white so that you all can advocate for it. If that
I would
makes
say,
sense.
just to add on that, the biggest thing that we have that like Montgomery County doesn't have in all the DC surrounding places is we don't have that above grade concrete that we have to see every day on our commute. So I think keeping that out would be great. And I think if there was some way to build some sort of historical character or artistic bridge, pedestrian only, bike only, in that sort of way, that way you could keep out the you know, the fact that we don't have to get on exit ramps every day
Mhm.
is one of the huge things about living here that I've noticed. And I think is something that, you know, they can't touch us on that.
Right.
So I think if keeping that would be huge. I think it would be.
That's great.
I prefer to see tunnels as opposed to bridges myself for a few different reasons. I mean, bridges are out in the weather, so you can have freezing and things like that that could potentially lead to safety issues. I think maintenance is probably gonna be more. And I mean, if you're talking about DC and that area, whether it's the you know, Capitol Crescent Trail or any of the others that link Rock Creek, that link to it, they're both, all the way down to Mount Vernon. But tunnels, I mean, even in Florida, like the Villages, you know, that's completely accessible by golf carts, and it's primarily tunnels.
I think we have language in there, bridges or tunnels,
Or
yeah,
tunnels,
whatever
yes.
makes sense, yeah.
And it may be a different characteristic depending on where and how it should be engineered, but I think about the topography at each of the locations where that may help dictate, yeah, some of those.
A lot of water at Clark's Rest, I mean, it's very high water tables and flooding, so that one maybe not, but maybe,
More up by Riken, maybe.
yeah.
Other things you want us to make sure that we're looking at, paying attention to, or things you want to preserve and make sure stick around?
I'm a little ignorant to current zoning practices when it comes to like the built environment, but are green building initiatives or tax incentives for those who want to build net zero or LEED platinum type of buildings thought of in the comprehensive plan?
There is an environmental section in it. Lachelle, I'm gonna kick it to you since it isn't the zoning plan. I don't believe you have those incorporated in the zoning code.
Correct, but we did get a sustainable community designation, which is a designation by the state. You have to show a certain amount of progress in environmental issues like that. We are, certainly, that will be in the sensitive areas section. And probably we should, you know, address it in some other chapter as well, that we are a sustainable community and working on those. I don't recall exactly what chapter it would go in, but working toward that designation, and there's different levels of that designation. But for instance, the Smecco building, when they built, they, you know, tried to meet a lot of the criteria, then Captain Walter Duke, Francis Duke School as well, so,
It's got a green roof.
yeah. So,
With that large section of land that hasn't been the Tudor Hall property, if it's gonna be homes, you know, just thinking, I know the, just various credits that the state has, like geothermal wasn't a credit, I think, that you could get 10 years ago,
right,
and it is now, and finding ways to, just make it easier for people that might wanna develop, so it's not a hurdle for them,
So incentivize it.
as much as you
Right,
can.
yeah.
that's a good point.
Good. And I'm taking notes in a couple different spots. Other things we wanna make sure that we're paying attention to.
Got another one, and I'm sure other people have different viewpoints, but the industrial zoning, right, like for instance, Leonard's Grant, driving down Leonard's Grant Parkway, driving next to Smecco, next to whatever else they're gonna do. Kind of an eyesore for people who live there. They did a good job architectural wise, but to me, it seems like those industrial zones should be
They're institutional, is what they're called.
of
Yeah,
institutional.
institutional, so it's more government buildings, libraries, schools, that sort of thing.
Okay, and Smecco is.
Smecco has, they were not institutional at one point, and they may have, but I mean, they've been there for a really long time. I mean, that Smecco building's been there,
Yeah.
I don't even know how many years.
So-
I mean, they just rebuilt,
Sure.
but it's certainly been there for a long time. I think at one point it was changed to institutional just because the use was institutional for a long, you know, Smecco's been there for so long.
Okay, so institutional, you said government buildings.
The only other land out there available right in that area is now commercial office. There's no more institutional. Smecco Properties built, the library, behind it, they have planned a park at one point, I don't know, on the rest of the Hayden Farm, and then there was a middle school behind Captain Juke, but that's kind of not needed at this time. They still have the site, but pretty much everything is built out except the frontage between the Davis Office Park and Smecco. Those farms are available, but those are all commercial office. There's no more institutional.
Okay, so those
Zoning
new
level.
areas that are kind of the red crosshatch that are in the growth area,
So those are, that's in the outside of the town in the development district that the county has designated.
okay.
And
So
those
it's
are
not
all
even
residential,
Residential
residential
use, that's
zoning
all
at this time in the county.
Okay.
I think you're hitting an important discussion item that we're looking at in that particular area is that, and it's interesting because there's development pressure for residential in the county in that area, but that also could be an extension of the commercial in the future. So I think that's I won't call it a flashpoint, it's just a point of discussion that we're having, in that particular area.
Well, like you mentioned, the mixed use, institutional, I guess, instead by the library and stuff. It seems like there could be more use for commercial there instead of institutional. So having that mixed use, I do
We
think
actually,
is a,
yeah, it used to, when it got annexed into the town, which was, probably less than 10 years ago, those parcels got annexed, the Hayden Farm, the Davis Building, and the farms along Hollywood Road that are empty now. Those got annexed in, and we specifically did not do commercial because that wasn't where we wanted the commercial downtown to grow. We were trying to protect the downtown core, and there was already commercial on Route 5. So it specifically was designated as commercial office so that there wasn't retail or gas stations, that sort of thing going out there. The thinking at the time was that, it's really where the schools, the library, that sort of thing were located.
Y'all are hitting on several the hot buttons that we had identified. I do want to ask a question. This kind of is a tangent to the green initiatives and what I'm seeing in Maryland. They tend to be more countywide initiatives. Like Howard County has like a green neighborhoods initiative, and there's some incentives related to that. But I do want to circle back to the active adult piece of this, and this has to do with housing and housing typologies that might be suitable for that active adult. The appetite for that in the community, where that should go. When I look at the breakdown of the housing types that you have here in Leonardtown, the single-family detached unit is the predominant use. And so you certainly have some new apartments that have been developed, and then also, downtown you have upper floor residential. So any comments, thoughts that at least you want us to noodle on and give you some feedback on as far as housing types and things like that to just be mindful of as we look at the plan?
We know you have it. You have something to say there, come on.
No, I just think that for a sustainable community, the more the better of different types, because not everybody wants to live in single family, not everybody wants to live in a townhouse, not everybody wants to live in multifamily. Some want active adult, some want, for families, some for, middle-aged guys with no kids, and it's just, the best and most sustainable communities have a wide range of products.
Right.
It's just, it's all single-family communities are, you don't necessarily always want that, so.
To piggyback on that idea, I'd like to see that those options also come in a price range that's affordable for
absolutely.
folks.
Yep.
And for folks that are investing, I've had friends, find affordable housing in Denver, and those places that communities will put restrictions in place, like you can't sell this for a profit for 30 years, kind of, to help avoid pricing out people or gentrification or, I don't know, like a money grab for folks to just buy it up and start renting it out right away. I know there's a lot of different methods in place to help prevent that type of, I don't want to call it abuse, but it is what it is, but There are also methods, whether it's community leasing, but to make it affordable for all types of different families.
And I think some of the state regulations are kind of, while they're not in stone at this point, they're leaning toward going to that, where you have to have a certain percentage of affordable type housing and
And
different
then
types of
looking
housing.
at things like density bonuses for that, or ADUs, which, you know, and we've, even on our, you know, we've had some discussions on the pros and cons of ADUs. And then I'll just give you some of the stats as far as y'all stack up, just so you can, in the town of Leonardtown, 58% of your housing units are one unit detached, compared to 72% in St. Mary's County. You're about the same with one unit attached, which would be a townhouse product. And then, but where you're different is that you do have more apartments proportionally, 23%, compared to about 4% countywide. But we would expect that in a town as opposed to a county. So it's an interesting kind of piece of that. And then just kind of looking here. Most of your units were built, we're looking at, so as you would expect, you know, over 25% of your units are built since 2000.
What about units like in your commercial districts, second story? You know, it is a part of your Main Street.
The Main Street says that we need to try to have upstairs
Yes,
residents.
yeah, okay.
We have a lot of it that has come about since 2000, you know, a lot of the buildings have gone up a story and added some apartments, and then the Hamptons, of course, that was more apartments available. And the difference that it made in the vitality of the downtown at night and weekends, and
Yes.
it really helped the business community and the restaurants and that sort of thing, the walkable
Right.
living. Also, Meadows at Town Run 2 is gonna be starting construction, so it connects, this is Meadows at Town Run 1 across from the library. And that's built out 107 units, but in the rear, there's a pathway system, and they have plans, they're getting ready, they're starting in the back with some townhome units. It's almost all townhomes and three or four apartment buildings? Three apartment buildings. And they're not gonna be elevated like the Hamptons, they're gonna be more, you know, moderate, not low income, but more for, you know, people graduating from college and getting started, that sort of thing. So that is under construction now. You can see the road, it's Dry Docking Lane if you go out Hollywood Road. The road is already in, and they're starting on that development right away, so.
The first phase is the 74 townhouses.
They only have 12 single families in that development, and then the rest is apartments and townhomes.
And that's one thing we'll have to, I say have to, the state's wanting us to do, which is probably more, well, it is more detailed than prior plans. We're gonna have to look at the number of units that are cost burdened. And so preliminary analysis, and 30% is kind of that rule of thumb, you know, if you're paying more than 30% of your income. And so, you know, we're looking at about 20% or 30% or more in what they're paying in their housing. And then, and I'm kind of scanning through some of the numbers here. That's for the ownership side. From the renter side, it's even higher. We're looking, and so the for rent product is probably the one where we have some opportunity to get some affordability worked in, to have kind of a balance of that. Y'all are interesting in that the town, you're 52%, 53% owner occupied and 47% renter occupied, compared to the county, which is 71% owner, 28% renter. Again, that's normal for me to see. You would expect a town to be a bit I won't call you urban, but a town's gonna be more balanced in renter owner vis-a-vis a county unincorporated.
I guess, going back then, if there's that much high density area or residential area in that town run 2, did you say it was? To me, it seems like it again screams for a little bit more commercial zoning in that area. You know, you got Bradford's right there, but I guess I don't see people, if there's that much of an area there and it's that far away biking or walking wise, I don't see people wanting to commute to downtown. If they do, they're gonna wanna get in their car, then they're gonna need to park it, or they're gonna just go somewhere else. It just seems like there should be something closer if you've got such a high density population.
Good point. And actually, some of the, most of the big farms, the blue is all PUD, which is planned unit development, and that does allow for commercial. And actually Leonard's Grant, in their initial plan, they did have a small amount of like a coffee shop and a little convenience store, something like that. So the PUDs do allow for that. It's just a matter of if the developer wants to pursue that or not. So there are areas, anything in the blue already, and the ones in pink, again, aren't in the town, so they could be zoned, commercial or PUD when they come into town. It's certainly something that we can add to the comp plan. I mean, it's a good comment.
It's a really good comment. Yeah. We kept you for about an hour. I want to make sure that we address anything in a group setting and then kind of open it up. And if y'all have other things that you want to comment on, we've got your classic sticky notes where you can make your own comment. If there's a particular area that you want to look at and kind of draw an area to it and stick it on the map so that we can pay attention to that. And then also, if you didn't pick it up on the way in, there's surveys. We'd love you to take a survey. We'll also be working to get that online so that it can be taken online as well.
And if you haven't signed in, please do so, and we can keep you up to date on, when there's other meetings and
Yeah.
such.
This is really just a kickoff. We've started doing some of the data and talked about some of the issues that you all brought up this evening, but we wanted to kind of get the ball rolling. And then there will be kind of looking ahead. And I want to make sure I'm getting the public hearing piece. That will be
So we will be.
first of the.
We're hoping first of January we'll have public hearings in front of the Planning and Zoning Board, and then they will refer it to the Town Council. We'll have public hearings in front of the Town Council for adoption. In the meantime, we plan on having, other roundtables like this with different groups and, for the public as well. And staff can stay around and we can try to answer your questions as well if you want to talk to anybody individually about something or just make a note or whatever. But we thank everybody for coming, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Please make notes on anything. If there's a particular site or particular location that, it's like, I need you to make sure we're paying attention to this, by all means do that. And then other things, if you wanted to say it but didn't, or, yeah, didn't want to say it to everybody, by all means, put that down.
And my email address is on the back of the survey, so if you think of something or you want to send it, and I can be the point of contact, so we're not overloading everybody else.
Great. Thanks, Janine.
Michelle wants everybody to email her tomorrow.
She'll love it.
Call and email.
Unless I have my cell phone.
Yeah, I will wrap up by, I know that no community's perfect. Y'all have a record of planning and good planning here in Leonardtown. So it's really nice to have a meeting like this where we can talk and kind of get at it early on. I've been to meetings like this where I literally feel like I had to put on body armor before I walk in the room. But it's always a joy to be here in the community and appreciate it.
Also, if you could speak to the fact that we do actually put our plans on the shelf, we actually make them happen.
Yes, it is always fun to come back here and realize that every time I'm here, some other piece of the plan has been implemented. So it's really so much. The community thrives. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Michelle.
So you're.